You're listening to the Back Home Network, presented by Home Field Apparel.
Right up Meridian, baby. Hey there, folks. Scott back with you for another episode of Right Up Meridian. I got Tony Adrania with me. It's fun, man. We were talking a little IU basketball before we hopped on here, a team that doesn't always give you what you want. Like the Pacers are so much fun this year because they keep coming back and they keep winning these games and back-to-back wins against the Bucks. It's good times. This is a fun season to be starting this thing up.
Yeah, that's a tough transition to make there, Scott, to go from talking the doom and gloom of IU basketball right into Pacers, 4-1 series win against the Bucks. But I'm thrilled to be talking about it it's a much happier place for my basketball mind.
Yeah. So where do you want to start with this? I mean, I've been plowing over some numbers. I got a lot of things. But I'm curious, where do you want to start since last time we talked?
When was the last time we talked? Was it? I think we were just about to play Boston.
It's been a while. Yeah, unfortunately, it's been a while.
It's been too long. Man, a lot has happened since then. We've been through the in-season finals. Been through a downtrend. Now we're in the midst of a lineup change. That's a 5-game winning streak. Like, I'm down to talk it all.
Here's my question, because you coach basketball, not at an NBA level, but
not yet.
I was reading, if you're not we're going to have Scott on at some point. Scott Agnes is awesome with the Fieldhouse Files. Check him out on Substack, just a complete, unpaid. He's fantastic. It's great stuff. During that, 4 or 5 game losing streak, he was mentioning how, they were the team was having a hard time, and they did, I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head, but it was like they had a Monday, Wednesday game, and they did a practice on a Tuesday, which was very unusual for the NBA, because Carlisle's like, I need to throw some stuff in. I thought that was really, really interesting. Again, I know you haven't coached the NBA level, but I'm just curious if you can throw some insight on this. Like, I would assume at the NBA level, guys are good enough where you could just be on the plane and be like, all right, hey, Ty, we got to do this. And you kind of talk things through. But it really seemed like they needed a practice to do stuff. And they've been a completely different team since then. Like, I find that really interesting that even at the NBA level, you can't just kind of talk through stuff. You actually have to practice.
I think it also speaks to the nature of how young this team is. And a lot of these guys haven't been through a long grind of NBA and don't understand or necessarily comprehend all of the different concepts and things that a guy like Rick Carlisle, who's been around for years and years, has thrown out there. So I think that's a big part of it. I mean, I think if you had more veteran-laden team, like maybe the Lakers or something like that, like you might be able to throw more things in, like you said, on the plane. But for Rick Carlisle to kind of recognize, like, look, like, we got some stuff we got to do. Like, sorry, guys, call them practice. I love it. Like, I think it's good. Talking, about the Bucks stuff, I love what they started doing, walling up on Giannis. Like, that was obviously a big adjustment they made from the 64-point game. But yeah, I think that, like you said, like, these guys are the best in the world at their craft, like the absolute best. But it's still like there's synergy to be had and chemistry to be had by getting together on the practice court and figuring things out. Like, you can never duplicate that, just in like a film session or whatever the case may be. So I love it.
Yeah. And and the results show. So if you're not on, there's a website called Cleaning the Glass, which is awesome. It's like $50 a year. It's worth paying for their info. But they have, effective field goal percentage, but then they also look at things so basically the percentage of the percentile rank for all the games played by all the teams in that stat for that season. So like where in the season, like, every game has an effective field goal percentage, like where it ranks across all the games for that season. After that practice, the Pacers played the Hornets. I'm just going to rattle this off. They were 75% effective field goal percentage in that game. It's 100% in the league. They lost to Memphis. They were 39, but then they went 87 in the league, 91, 84, 100 again. 12 wasn't great against Milwaukee first game, and the second game 95. And the effective field goal percentages were 52, 62, 64, 61, 74, 47, 66. I mean, these numbers are astonishing. Like, once it's it's amazing with one day of tweaking, you immediately like there's two kind of off games there, but you're having games where you're shooting 60-70% effective field goal. That is utterly bananas how good this offense can be when they get going.
It's fun. It is so fun to watch. Like it's led by the head of the snake in Haliburton. Like I can't state enough how much that trade for Haliburton just reinvigorated the fan base, the organization. Like it just went from this kind of like plotting two bigs with Sabonis and Miles Turner, and it just like never seemed to work. Like they were trying to fit square pegs and round holes. All of a sudden you get this dynamic talent in Haliburton, and he just unlocks so much for this team. So we're now, I think they still are on pace to be the best offensive team in the history of the NBA.
Yeah.
Which is insane. Like that's a complete 180 flip from when like the last time the Pacers were really good. Like they were defense. Like I think I saw a game they beat the Heat like 69-67 or something just insane. Like it's a complete flip from when the last time they were good, but it's a fun brand of basketball to watch.
No, it is. And I've gotten to the point now with Haliburton. I love going to the games. I keep preaching, you got to see him in person. Like it's just the reads that he makes, the way that he just kind of looks off people. And even when he doesn't have the ball, he's directing guys on offense. Like he is running the entire show, but he just doesn't like, I've gotten to the point now where like, I'm just, whatever he does, I'm very comfortable with his decisions. Cause he also just doesn't turn the ball over. Like we've talked about it before. Like that's the hidden secret is that the defense the stats in the defense are still atrocious. Like the defense still is not great. But if you're going to be scoring, it's kind of the complete opposite of IU basketball, like we were talking about earlier. If you're going to be scoring 47 points in a quarter and not turning the ball over, like that becomes a type of defense where you're putting so much pressure on the other team. Like last night for the Bucks, it's like, fine, go put the ball to Giannis. Like go get 2. We're going to get 3, and then we're just going to keep scoring and not turning the ball over. And that ends up putting a lot of pressure on the other team because most teams can't get 46, 47 points in a quarter. And when they start pressing, they start turning it over. And that, it's not going to work every night. It's not probably going to win them, get them the Eastern Conference Finals, but it's a really interesting brand of basketball. And it puts enough pressure on teams enough of a time that it becomes kind of like a defensive crutch.
Yeah, I was laughing last night. Like found myself in like the comment section of like Bucks film room. And they were like, talking back and forth with one another. Like, why would we try to run with Indiana? We can't run with Indiana. Slow it. Like, it's fun to watch a team like have to play your brand. Like as a coach, like that's like when you kind of know, like we got him. Like Rick Carlisle, like outcoached Adrian Griffin for 5 games. He did. I mean, he got them to play the style of basketball that the Pacers wanted them to play. And to me, that's like the biggest compliment you can give a coach is, when the other team adapts to your style and not vice versa. So it's fun. Like you said, I don't think it's necessarily the end all be all for where Rick Carlisle wants this team to be in terms of their identity. I do think he would like some better defensive play, but at the same time, I think the last 5 games in this winning streak, they've cut the points per game allowed by like 15 points or something like that, like 127 to 112 per game or something along those lines. So like, there seems to be some improvement there as well, which is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this since the last 2 pods. This is why I really wanted to come on today. This is why I like this team so much. I said this in the last pod that I think it was a little bit of fallacy to be like, oh, they had their moment in the in-season tournament, they've sucked since. Like, well, they were kind of a 500 team before, and they've been a 500 team after. A little bit, slight variance here or there. They had a losing streak. The ball fracas with the Bucks is like whatever that got some pub. And they did, they lose 4 in a row, which is 4 in a row, which isn't awesome. But what I like about this team is you definitely felt like they started to feel themselves in the in-season tournament. And then, they do the, Haliburton does the Dame time. Like they start, and that's great. Like I like that edge that he has. But then it did feel like for the next week and a half, 2 weeks, it's kind of like the Icarus, like flying too close to the sun. Like you got a little bit too big, and it's like suddenly people start playing you differently. Like I said, again, keep referencing the last pod. Like you go look at the numbers, Haliburton's efficiency scoring, like none of that has really changed. So I don't think it's like, oh, they're playing him differently. I think other factors are at play. But then the Bucks thing, like the Bucks came in pissed. They went at the Pacers, and then the Pacers started losing. And there was I was starting to feel like, all right, like this team, not that they had their moment in the sun, but like they got a little bit too big and like they're starting to get kicked down. And then they come back and they have that one practice and it's like, you know, they lose to Memphis, they lose to Orlando. I'm kind of like, I don't know. And then they, you know, beat Houston when Houston sucks, but they beat Chicago, a team they've had trouble beating before. They beat the Knicks. That's a good team. I was at that game. Like that was unbelievably physical. And then you have a home, you know, back-to-back against Milwaukee. Winning 2 games on a back-to-back is really hard. Like beating a team twice in 2 days is hard. And they do it. And they do it going away. And they basically kick the shit out of the Bucks in Gamebridge. And they have the swagger. You know, they've had the swagger back throughout this. And it's like, that's what I love is like, they're coming back. Like they got kicked down and they're picking themselves back up in a stretch where, like we've talked about, this is a really tough stretch. You're about to have another home and home against Boston. You have a road trip coming up. Like you can't go on like a 5 or 6 game losing streak here, but it's just the way they're able to pick themselves up off the mat and come back and still have that edge is really, it's really a lot of fun as a fan.
And I think too, with, you know, kind of that lull after the in-season tournament, like I think that was somewhat like expected almost, right? Like they just were riding this high, go to the finals, if you will. And then 2 days later, you're on an airplane playing another game. Like that's tough to like figure out that balance. And I think it's something NBA teams are going to have to do because the Lakers have had the exact same issue. Like as soon as they won it, they went on like a 5-game losing streak.
Yep.
You know, that's a lot of energy. Like playoff basketball and regular season basketball, they're different. They just are.
Yeah.
In terms of like the intensity level, the minutes logged, you know, the strategy, like all of that is on a larger scale. So having to go from like that big spotlight's on you to then like all of a sudden it's like back to like you're on Bally Sports where half the state can only watch you. It's a little bit different.
I know. How pissed are you that Bally Sports signed? They got another year. Like the Pacers signed another year with them. Like it would have been perfect. Hey, you guys are bankrupt. Like we're just going to go somewhere else. Like another year of Bally Sports.
Man, I hope so. I don't know how it's going, but the Utah and Phoenix markets that put it on like local,
I hope
like
it works.
antenna TV, like I hope that is what it goes back to. And because like that would be awesome. Like this state deserves to like just be flipping the channels and pop on the Pacers. Like they're so much fun to watch. And now I think they've sold out their last 4 or 5 games. Like people are starting to pay attention. Resale value of your tickets are going up. It's, you know, it's fun. Like it's fun and exciting. And then like you said, like they went on that little lull. And then Rick Carlisle made that starting lineup adjustment, and they've been gangbusters since. They're 5-0 since that lineup switch. I love Aaron Nesmith. That dude is fun. He's the best 3-point shooter in the league right now, which is insane. Obviously on low volume, but it's just, yeah, man, it's refreshing to watch the brand of basketball that they're playing. And like even when they lose, like they've lost 14 games, like you know what their identity is. Like that's what I was talking to somebody that's another IU fan and Pacers fan. I'm like, IU, I don't really know their identity. Like the Pacers, even when they lose, I know they're going to score 1,000,000 points. They're going to have fun personalities. Like you know exactly what you're going to get when you watch Pacers basketball. And so like that's when I turn my TV on every night at 7. Like it's exciting because I know it's going to be an exciting brand of basketball.
When you talk about that trade, like there's no knock on Sabonis. I thought Sabonis was actually, I really liked watching him, like some of the best footwork of big men I've ever seen. Like he's phenomenal in the post. It's not that he doesn't make people better because he does, but not in this way. Like Haliburton has just unlocked, like to me, the best of Miles Turner. Like this is the best Miles Turner has ever looked. Now he's also kind of hitting the apex of his career, but for a while there, Miles Turner was like, all right, what is he? Like this guy looks like a real piece now, but it's because of Haliburton. I would also say this too, like the last 3 games, I'm just going 3 because 2 is like double against the Bucks seems a little bit unfair, but you know, just mentioning the top 2 players in effective field goal. I know it's my stat of the day, but effective field goal percentage from the last 3 games, Miles Turner's the second, shooting 72.6%. Mathurin, have to mention him, 73.5%. They both have offensive ratings of over 125, although to be fair, most of this team does. Like their offensive ratings are all like 120 or above, but Turner's 127, Mathurin's 129. It is living in this world. Like I'm getting all these stats and I'm thinking like, well, how many points did Mathurin score? And it's like you almost have to click so much deeper to find a box score that you and I are used to growing up, like points, rebounds, like all of it is advanced stats. I'm like, where's just the points? But the last 3 games, Mathurin has scored 20, 25, and 16. The first game against the Bucks also had 13 rebounds, not as many points, but way more efficient in the last game against the Bucks. And to me, that's what I find interesting when I start digging into the stats a little bit is it's not Haliburton. Like Haliburton is fantastic, but he is like a steady line. And even when they're not doing well, he provides pretty much the same stats almost every single game. Obviously, some variance. It's the guys like Turner and Mathurin who are a little more up and down. But if you can get this, and it looks like Mathurin has kind of turned some kind of corner. If you can get this version of Mathurin, or even like 80 to 85% of Mathurin here, like to me, this raises the ceiling of the Pacers where they really could compete for that 5 or 6 seed in the playoffs.
What I love about Mathurin is that when tensions rise, like some guys cave to that. Like he does not seem to be that guy. Like last night he was going back and forth with Damian Lillard at the free throw line. There's like 5 seconds left in the third quarter, going back and forth, and Mathurin calls for the ball, gets out of timeout, dribbles down, nails a 3 to end the quarter, and just like looks emotionless. He's just walking off the court like, yeah, I knew I was going to do that. Like, I love that like dog mentality that he seems to have. And plus there's, it was rumored that when the Bucks came in the locker room, he was very vocal and animated with the Bucks about like, get the heck out of here. Yep. And then the first game against the Bucks in this little 2-game series, Haliburton was dribbling the basketball out to end the game, and Mathurin so badly wanted to get the ball and do something. Like he was trying to create havoc, and Haliburton's like, no, like we don't want to give them any more fuel to the fire. But I just love that Mathurin seems like he's got a little dog in him, and that's that edge. Like he's obviously not the like Lance Stevenson to that extreme of that edge, but that's a dude you need on your team that has that kind of mentality. Like, hey, I know Damian Lillard is more skilled than me, but I'm going right back at him. Like, I don't care. Like that was Lance Stevenson with LeBron. Like LeBron was obviously way better than Lance Stevenson, but he would go at him and he didn't care that it was LeBron James. Like you kind of need that. And so I think Mathurin can be that piece as the Pacers move forward. And then as you said, like right now he's really coming into his own. Feels like he's got a good defined role. He's getting the good minutes. And, when he produces, Rick Carlisle's going to put him on the floor. And so that, gives him confidence as well that like, if I'm productive, like I'm going to play. So love his game and love the kind of corner that it seems to be he's turning.
Yeah. And, I'll ask you this. I talked about this before, as I look at the standings, got to pull up the standings here. I know I should not talk about it before I have it pulled up. But when you look at the NBA standings, the Pacers are in this. Let me pull it up. I know, horrible potting. They're kind of in this spot where it's like I don't know. We'll go big picture here. I'm not sure what they need to do and what they need to go, because this little run has helped. The schedule coming up is just it's still brutal. Tough. Bugs me. It's like you have the Hawks, then you have back-to-back against the Celtics, which is like, come on, I'm tired of these.
When did we start doing that? Like when did the NBA start doing these back-to-back things?
I don't know. I don't like it because it's not fair to either team. It's like it's tough.
I'm not a fan.
Not fair to the Celtics. So they got to play here twice, and it's really tough to beat teams twice. Like the Celtics, like they play us 5 times on 5 separate nights. They might beat us 5-0. But they're not going to have that chance. And but it's also not fair to the Pacers. It's like I don't see us going 2-0 against the Celtics.
Right. I don't want to play the best team in the league two games in a row.
But we have that, and then it's like, okay, great. The Wizards at home, but then you have this road trip where you're at Atlanta, at Denver, at Utah, at Sacramento, at Portland, at Phoenix. Then you come home and you play the Nuggets and the Sixers and the Suns, like the exact same effing teams, and the Grizzlies, who are now back. And then you're at Boston, and then you're at New York. I mean, it does not let up. Like, you don't see the Pistons. Like, where's the Pistons?
Yeah, where's our back-to-back against the Pistons in there?
Yeah, no kidding. We used to like 4 of those. Just play the Pistons every week. So I mean, this is going to change. I don't think we're going to stay in the 5 hole that we're in right now. But I do think I think there's a level that we're, I said it before. I think there's like 5 teams fighting for 4 playoff spots, because I look at like the Pistons, the Wizards, and the Hornets are just out of it. The Raptors traded OG Anunoby. I would assume they're going to trade Siakam. I don't know, but like
Are they trading him to the Pacers?
Yeah. Yeah. But if they're out of it, then it's like there's no point in tanking, is my point. Like you're not going to get so low. The best you can do is be the 11th spot, which is like barely lottery and not in the play-in. On the flip side, they're not going to get above the Celtics, the Bucks, the 76ers, or the Heat probably. And they're probably not better than the Magic, even though they're above them now. So you're kind of in this middle spot. So like I think this is a stand pat year, but I'm curious your thoughts of like if you think they should go forward or tank or whatever.
Yeah, I like where they're at. I think that it kind of reminds me of that Pacers group a decade ago with Paul George and those guys. I think they were like a 6 seed or something like that. And then they gave the Heat a run for their money. Next season, they were like the 2 seed, go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Season after that, they're the 1 seed in the East, go to the Eastern Conference Finals again. Like it kind of reminds me of that trajectory. I think the spot they're in right now is good. They definitely need playoff experience if they want to make a run in the next couple, 2 to 4 years. Like, so I obviously would love to see them make the playoffs and like the real playoffs, not the playing game stuff. Like go in a series where you're fighting for, your future. So where they're at right now would be fantastic. Like if you're the 5 seed, ideally you're not playing the Heat because they're a different animal in the playoffs with Jimmy Butler. But I like where they're at. Maybe you tank to get that 7 seed, so you play the Bucks in a 7-game series. But yeah, like you said, no sense in trying to tank things or anything like that. Especially this draft class coming up is such a mystery. When you're into January and you still don't really have any idea who the top pick is, usually there's something to be said about that. So. There's no like prize possession, like a Wembanyama or anything like that you'd want to get. So I like where they're at. Obviously, like you said, if they can escape, this month with
500,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. 500 or a game variance, top or bottom. Like I think you still got to be pretty happy with that. And there's going to be a 3-game losing streak or something in there. But like you said, don't let it become 5, 6, 7 games. And because that's when the wheels can fall off a season. Guys start losing confidence, things like that. So if they can squeak in, some wins in there, obviously the West Coast road trip is always tough. But, I think they've got a good group that right now they've shown their offense travels no matter where it goes. And they're tough to keep up with. So we'll see how it goes.
They're breaking a lot of conventional wisdom thoughts because like I think they're going to pick up more of these games against teams because they're tough to plan for. Like they really are tough to plan for with that offense because it's kind of like IU played Kennesaw State the other night and it's like you're just not used to playing this, and that happens in the regular season. What is funny is normally the saying goes like that's really that goes away in a playoff series. Like once you start seeing the same thing, you kind of break it down. And again, they're not playing a playoff series, but you just played back-to-back against Milwaukee. And it's like Milwaukee couldn't do any. The second game, they weren't able to slow it down. Against
worse.
The back-to-back against 76ers, they lost the first one and they came back and the Pacers played better in the second one. And so there is this weird, like, I, like you, would love to see them in a 7-game series and see, like, is there something going on here where it's actually the Pacers who are able to, like, turn it up the next notch against teams, because the conventional wisdom is always these kind of funky playing teams. It's like, all right, like that was always like the James Harden thing. It's like, all right, he's kind of tough to play in the regular season because you're not used to seeing it, but then on a 7-game series, you can kind of figure it out. I don't know. Like there's a world where like maybe the Pacers have that second gear. I'd love to see it, but I do think the regular season thing is going to hold, is that there's just not a lot of teams in the NBA doing this. Not a lot of teams obviously have a guy like Haliburton who's able to run an offense like this. And so it is something where if you're the Suns, it's just like, this is not what you're used to practicing, what you're used to seeing. And you could just be like, man, and if the Pacers get hot and they throw 50 in a quarter, it's like, all right, well, if you're the Suns, like, all right, man, tough times. We're going to go back to the West Coast and play, teams like that.
And with Haliburton too, like, are you going to double him? Because he's going to find the open guy. Like teams have tried that and he's going to find the open guy. You leave him one-on-one or you try to switch everything. He's going to isolate the big. He's going to get a step back 3. Like he's tough, man. He's tough to figure out right now. So if you can figure him out, like more power to you. Like, you deserve to win. But yeah, I'm with you. And it's just a new age. Like, okay, let's say you figure the Pacers out. Does that mean you figured out how to get them from 140 to 130? You know, so is that where you're at? And then do the Pacers figure you out a little bit? Like, these guys might get their feet under them. Some of the younger guys, they've got a great coach in Rick Carlisle that can game plan. Like, do they figure out your offense? And, so you might get 10 points shaved off them, but they're going to get 10 points shaved off you, and they're still scoring 120, 130 points. So I'm with you. I'm excited to see what that could look like. Obviously, this is a really tough stretch, but I am excited to see how some of these other teams match up again. Like, we've played the Bucks 5 times now. Like, I'm kind of sick of seeing the Bucks. Like, I want to see how some of these other teams, try to guard the Pacers, what the Pacers do against them. Especially on the West Coast.
Celtics, I want to see them with Porzingis. I want to see the Pacers go at him with Porzingis. Like, I want to see the Pacers take on the best, like, see what they can do. What can they do against Denver?
Yeah, and have Haliburton for sure, because the last one without Haliburton was brutal. No. What was it, like a 54-point loss?
You mentioned, tanking for the 7. There's I do not want to get ahead of ourselves. The Bucks are a really good team. Giannis is unbelievable. Pacers match up well against them. Like, they really do. Like, the Bucks, their biggest issue is perimeter defense. Dame is a traffic cone. And they just don't have anybody who can guard Haliburton. And the thing is, we have Nesmith can't stop Giannis, but Nesmith can kind of contain Giannis. And then also the Bucks, you get into this world where the Bucks kind of fall into the Jordan rules, where it's like, hey man, we'll just let Giannis go nuts. Like, Giannis, go for it. Now, I know the game he scored, 68, they did win, but you see a lot of this, and this is the Bucks' problem, is this also because they don't really have a coach coaching that team. It's like, it just becomes Giannis doing what he wants. And it's like, it's tempting because Giannis can score every time. But again, you're trading 3 for 2s, and then guys aren't getting into it.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, is, Bucks are what? They're a half game in front of the Sixers right now. Like, if they fall to that 3 spot and the Pacers can get in that sweet spot at the 6, like, they match up well, like you said. Like, obviously, the playoffs are a different animal, and the Bucks will certainly have the experience that the Pacers lack there.
Correct.
But, that 3-6 matchup, if you can get the Sixers to get their act together a little bit, and, I don't think anybody's topping the Celtics for that number 1 seed.
No, and that's where it's like, that's where I want to be out of the play-in, because
exactly.
I do think that the Celtics are just a horrible matchup for the Pacers. Like, I mean, they won a game, they can do it, but like, when I watch some of those Celtics games, when they have Porzingis and they have the whole team, like, they are freaking loaded.
They're dynamite.
They got, Holiday. That is, the Bucks made a decision, and we'll see if it works. But like, I can say this safely now as a Pacers fan, like, we're at a point with Haliburton where it's like the other team has to have a dude who can guard him. Like, we are at that point where, like, just like, who's going to yard Giannis? Like, there is the question, who the hell's going to guard Haliburton? And the Bucks had a dude like that. Drew Holiday can guard Haliburton, or at least stop him and cause some issues. And the problem is, so can Tatum, so can Brown. Like, that Celtics team is I would like to see them the least. I would like to see the 76ers the second least, because Maxey can also, I don't think he can keep up with Haliburton as well, but he can cause some problems. The Bucks are the team where they just don't have anybody.
Nope. I mean, they may go get somebody at the trade deadline here. They've had some things exposed, but what are they going to give up?
Yeah, but and who are they going to get? Like, OG might have been that guy.
Right.
So I'll ask you, I want to end on I hate bringing it up, but we'll probably bring it up for the rest of the season, every single podcast. If the Pacers are going to stand pat, I do think, you look at it, it's like the Buddy Hield thing continues to come up. And it's not that I don't like Hield. I said it a million times. I think he and Haliburton play fantastic together. I think having a 3-point shooter like that around Haliburton is something that you need. He's really the perfect player with Haliburton. The 2 problems he has is, 1, he's 31 years old, so he doesn't quite meet the timeline. 2 is he's making $19.2 million this year. Different time, different topic. I just think the NBA is moving towards, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys making the max and a bunch of guys making $2 million. So I think the days of a dude like Buddy Hield making 19 are going to be going away. But it's going to be a really hard time to get guys like that to understand this is the new reality. Somebody is going to offer him $22 million a year next year. I don't think it can be the Pacers, but you also cannot let this guy walk for nothing. I continue to come back to this conundrum. It's like they've got to do something, because if you just let him walk for nothing, I don't know. I'm leaving it there with you. Not even a question. Just, it's like the Buddy Hield conundrum that we got to figure out before the trade deadline.
I'm with you in terms of letting him walk for nothing would, would not be ideal. It seems, if you believe the reports that are out there, it seems that Pritchard, is at least active in making calls on certain guys. That's not to say that, Buddy Hield or any of those guys are involved in that, but um, it certainly seems like the Pacers are active and they're looking to be active within the next month here before the trade deadline. It keeps coming out that they were interested in OG. Obviously, he's out of the picture. They're interested in Siakam. Not sure what they would give up to get Siakam. He's a guy that, again, that's also on an expiring contract. His age, I don't know if it really fits the Pacers timeline as well. It may not. Um, yeah, it's tough, but I'm with you on the Buddy Hield thing because it is quite the conundrum because he's your best player's best friend. First of all, he's a good player. I think behind Steph Curry, he's made the most threes in the last 5 seasons in the NBA, which is an important piece of the Pacers offense. But at the same time, too, it's like his role has diminished a bit. His production has diminished a bit this season. Yeah, it's just what do you do with that?
Like if you look at it, the tax for next year is 142 million. So when you look at the salary cap for next season, it's 142 million. The Pacers already have 128 on the books. Some of those are team options. Like you have Bruce Brown at 23 million. I guess you could let Bruce walk and then pick up Buddy Hield. But again, now you're still losing an asset for absolutely nothing. They have Mathurin. They're going to pick that up. He's at 7 million. Jalen Smith is a player option at 5. I would assume he picks that up, although he might be able to get more there.
And there's a dude that's been playing good ball.
Yeah, I mean, he honestly could opt out, but let's just assume everybody you have there is you're at 128. If you sign Hield for 22 million or 20, which I also think he might want 25. I don't know. You get it for 22, that's your cap. That's the problem with Hield is this gets into an NBA thing. I know, I'm just kind of talking to the audience is it's less about the player and more about the contract. Buddy Hield is perfect for this team. He's great. The problem is you have a cap and there's only so much you can pay. And it's I would love, LeBron is awesome, but when you get to 76, $50-60 million a year, bad example. Sorry. Jaylen Brown, better example. Jaylen Brown is an awesome player, but once you start making 48 million a year, it's you're now viewed totally differently. And you've got to be the lead dude that wins a title. You just have to be at that price. And that's the problem. At what Buddy Hield provides isn't worth 22-23 million a year. And that's and then if you sign him, it's now if you're going to go do an offseason where you get a free agent like a Siakam or a Paul George, you bring them in, now you're 50 million over the cap. Now you're in the second apron and now you've lost all of that flexibility. So easy for me to say. You lost it. And now you're locked into this team and then you're going to become what Dallas has turned into, where it's you have this asset in Luka and then you keep having to trade for diminishing assets to get to Kyrie because you just are stuck with all these contracts and you can't trade. So I don't know, man. I'm really curious to see what they do. It would be great if you could find a way to get him to get down to 10 million, but I don't see that happening. And it's just, it sucks because I think he's really a big part of the team.
Yeah. Especially for a guy like him who, this could be his last big deal. So, I don't think he's going to do a hometown discount or anything like that. But like you said, man, he's valuable to what the Pacers are doing. If you can offset his shooting with somebody that can just lock down on the wing, I could see, why letting him go would make some sense. But man, yeah, when he gets it going too, he's so fun because he can score in bunches and in spurts. And he's a fun player to watch. So I'm with you. That one is tough one to figure out. It came out at the beginning of the season, him and the Pacers were pretty far away on terms in terms of a extension. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him here in this next month. And I think what the Pacers do well is if he's in trade discussions, they're going to go talk to Buddy about that. Kevin Pritchard's been pretty out front about that. Look, if somebody's name's in trade talks, we're going to go let them know, hey, we're talking about possibly dealing you. So, there's not going to be a lot of shock and surprises like there was when the Pacers traded Danny Granger away, a decade ago, and it kind of shook the locker room up. And they weren't better for it with Evan Turner. So I think they've kind of learned from that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you and I will do a deeper dive on this in a couple of weeks, but I do think it's tough because there's a lot of teams that just you can mark off the list that are just not going to be trade partners for Buddy Hield. Like, again, the Raptors, the Hornets, the Wizards, and the Pistons, like they don't need a guy on an expiring contract. They need, I guess they could pick him up and then try and trade him for other picks or something, but it's like they don't need it. What teams are contenders that need a 3-point shooter like that? And I go to like the Lakers. I think he's a great compliment for LeBron. The problem is you look at the Lakers, is like, do you want D'Angelo Russell back? Like, hell no. And then outside of that, it's like, then there's really nothing that it's like, do you want Gabe Vincent and, Jalen Hood-Schifino and Cam Reddish? Like, you start getting back a bunch of junk. Maybe you just do it for first round picks, but those are like 5 years down the road. This is where, again, you and I can do a deeper dive. I'm trying to think of one other team real quick. I'm just looking at the Timberwolves because they're going for it, and I could see him on that team. But again, it's like you might have to just go to their stockpile of picks because you look at the players, and it's like, they're
not going to give anything up that's an asset. They're trying to make a run.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to give up. Like, you don't want Conley back. He's also on an expiring contract, but you don't need another backup point guard. They're not going to give up Anthony Edwards at $9 million. Like, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, it's funny with the Pistons sucking is bad. Like, on one of Bill Simmons' podcasts, he was talking about maybe they should just reboot and get rid of Cade Cunningham. And to me, like, that would be, I said this earlier, like, that's, people forget how young Haliburton is at 23. And so all of these things, like, you get Paul George, you get Siakam, it's like all those guys are like 30, 31, which is great. But it's like by the time Haliburton is hitting his apex, they are going to not be good, or they're not going to be at the level they need to be at. So it's like, you got to look at guys like Lauri Markkanen, who are 25, or like I almost look at it as like, maybe you just trade Hield for a shot in the dark. Like, hey, I'm not even saying it's possible, but you can get the Pistons to get off of Cade Cunningham. He's not been awesome, but it's like, if you could reclaim that, and the Pacers now have a real history of reclaiming, like Jalen Smith, Obi Toppin, like reclaiming past lottery picks that haven't worked out as you want.
Victor Oladipo even.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. So I'm really curious to see what they do with it.
Yeah, what intrigues me and what I'm excited by is, like, Haliburton wasn't on anybody's radar in terms of somebody that the Pacers could go out and get before they got him. And so, like, Richard's got his eyes on guys that he knows can help propel this franchise forward. I don't know exactly who they are. I don't know what they're going to need to give up for it, but the Haliburton trade gives me great hope for where their eyes are at. And if there is, like, a guy that, might not be in a great situation, can kind of reclaim himself, like that, maybe that's what they got their eyes on. Because, Haliburton's situation in Sacramento just wasn't a great one. He was playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. Yep. They both want the ball in their hands, and the Kings were kind of in a similar situation as the Pacers, where the Pacers had two bigs, had to get rid of them. It was kind of an even swap, if you will, in terms of assets. So maybe they can find something along those lines where there's just somebody that isn't a great fit for where they're at, but they know they can flourish elsewhere. And I think that's why they liked OG, because he doesn't flourish with the Raptors, but you put him in an offensive system like the Pacers, he's probably a 20-point per game guy, and he's a lockdown wing defender. I think that's why their eyes are on him, and he might still be a possibility this offseason. I can't imagine the Knicks traded all those assets for him and not knowing he'd resign, but you never know.
It happens. I mean, it happened with Paul George and the Thunder, but this is where, again, the only thing with Hield is because it's an aspiring contract and he's an asset. I think he has real value in the league. Mm-hmm. You have to, you can't let that walk. But I do think outside of that, I think the Pacers need to stay in pat, because I've said for a while, I mean, it hasn't happened before. We haven't had a guy like Haliburton before. So I think it's different. Indy has not been a free agent destination, but it just does really feel like people will want to play with Haliburton. I look at Obi Toppin as one point of reference. Like, Toppin said, I want to play at Indiana before he even was given he told his agent, like, that's a guy I want to play with. And I just look at, like, if you're looking at Siakam and OG Anunoby and Paul George this offseason, like next offseason is like Lauri Markkanen, and I think there's somebody else I had mentioned before, Scotty Barnes. I think his next offseason are both free agents. Like, they might resign, they might want to go. Like, you got a lot of guys coming in who would be great to play with Haliburton, and I I do believe one of them is going to be like, I want to play with that dude, because Haliburton loves getting people involved, looks like fun to play with. And it's like, he is going to be hitting his apex in 3 or 4 years. He's going to get better. He's shown he wants to get better. I want to be a part of that. And you look at Obi Toppin, look at Miles Turner. Like, it's just like, these guys have gotten better around Haliburton. So I think if you're the Pacers, you've got to hope that that's going to happen. And I do think it's going to happen. So, yeah, man, we will see. But let's do that next time. Let's do a deep dive on what we want for Buddy Hield. Like, what's our best option?
Perfect. That means we got to talk here in like 2 weeks before the trade actually happens.
When is the trade deadline? It's February,
right before the All-Star game, or is it right after the All-Star game?
It's right around then. Yeah, great. Yeah, we don't know, but it is coming up. All right. Any final thoughts?
No, I do have a question for you though. Are you going to any of the All-Star game festivities?
So yes, I am going to the Slam Dunk, the Saturday thing in Lucas Oil.
Awesome.
What about you?
No, I tried to get tickets to that. Like, I did like the Indiana thing where they like gave Indiana people an opportunity, but I got in there right at the time it said to, but they were already all sold out. So
yeah, I'm gonna
I'll go downtown and enjoy the festivities at least.
Let's get together. We get you and I get to do something down there. I want to go check out the stuff down there. I'm curious to see what the Slam Dunk All-Star thing. I think doing it in Lucas Oil is awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be neat, man. I'm excited for it. It'll be a cool weekend.
But I'm not going to the All-Star game, partially just for I mean, so I have season tickets. Season ticket holders do not get access to this. If you don't know, and I don't know a ton about it, but I used to work for the Astros in Houston for a while when the All-Star game came in there, and just like the NBA is even different because there's less tickets, and they end up like they turn part of the stadium into a stage. But it's like when you get the All-Star game, I don't know the exact percentage, but like 50 to 60% of those tickets just go to the NBA. Like it is not the Pacers just owning it. Like they get a very small percentage of it. A lot of the suites, like you just don't get access to that. So I don't have.
Yeah, it's like a who's who. I was looking at ticket packages, like, oh my gosh, it was like $30,000. I'm like, that.
Yeah,
not in
and
the budget.
It's one of those where like it's going to be cool, it's going to be awesome, but like normally All-Star games do suck. Like they're just not super fun to watch. And it's like I don't really want to spend that.
Back to East-West this year, right? Like they're not doing like the captains and picking.
They're doing
teams.
the East-West this year, yeah. They're not doing the Elon score ending, which I kind of bum. I like.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of a bummer.
I totally agree. But yeah, I'm not going to the game, but I will go to the slam dunk 3-point. My son is turning 11. He's just so into this right now, and like that's the perfect event for him to go to.
Absolutely, man. That'll be a blast.
Dude, every morning he wakes up and last thing, like every morning he wakes up, we have the NBA League Pass. He opens it up on the TV and watches highlights of all of the games, like every single game. Every morning he's eating cereal. He's like, dude, look what Shea Gilgeous-Alexander did. And like, oh my gosh, like the Pelicans, like Zion, like it's cool to watch as a dad.
Get him on the pod. Let's go. Get him early.
He wants to. He's like, I want to do a section. What sucks is the Pacers highlights are always blocked. And it's like, this is such like this, and like now we can still get it on ESPN. Like he goes to a lot of games with me, but it's like, this is bad Pacers. Like this is bad Bally's. Like this is not the way you want to build fans.
Not in the slightest bit. Yeah. I mean, if you're a kid in Indiana, like, between 2K and not having access to the Pacers, like probably a lot of them aren't Pacers fan.
It's totally true. Yeah, no, it's wild. You have younger kids than I do. Once my son got into 2K, it was like his basketball knowledge shot up. His interest in basketball went up. And it's like, he's talking about like, man, I think Sengun's pretty good this year. Who are you? Yeah. And he's like, man, that Pacers trade, when they traded for Kawhi, that's the worst trade ever. I'm like, all right, well, like they were going for George Hill. Like,
right.
Explain some of these things. Like it's not just as black and white as you think. But yeah, I know I have I should pull it up. It's on the fridge right now. He put up his like all-time NBA lineup. It's got like LeBron, Burb. It's like, yeah, he's got like Sengun and like Boban. He's a big fan.
Nice. He's a big Rockets fan, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Just this morning, I was talking about the difference between Bojan Bogdanovic and Bogdan Bogdanovic. We had that. It's like, this is my son. I love it. So
that's awesome.
All right, man. Tony, let's do it in a couple weeks. Good talking with you. And everybody else, man, enjoy this homestand. We got 4 more games left, and we're going on the road. If you're not watching the Pacers, man, you are missing out. They are a fun team to watch. So for Tony, this is Scott for Right Up Meridian, signing off.